Hey, everybody. Happy day. Happy Tuesday. I am back here in the office, back home. I was at a conference last week, if you watched last week's breakdown and update, and now I am back. And this is a disclosed location, i.e., my office. So I am here to share a little bit about last Sunday, the upcoming Sunday, a breakdown and an update. And let's start with John preached on Sunday. He got to preach on the death of Jezebel. And he covered a lot more just about how God deals with the haughty. And that's a great word, haughty. I stand approximately 6 feet tall. So I was glad when he said that people over 6'1" are too tall and therefore evil. I don't think he actually said it that way. I felt good because I was not included in that. And that was nice. But I want to talk about a little bit the perspective I had on that particular passage because I didn't get to preach it. And so I can't really speak for John on a breakdown of what was cut for time from his perspective on the sermon. And I thought he did a phenomenal job. I love it that we have a staff of people who are good preachers and in some cases, great preachers. And if you didn't know, John actually has a doctorate in preaching. How cool is that? I don't have a doctorate in anything. But his doctorate is in preaching to teens, and it's great to see him use that gift and that training for our church. But this idea of the Elijah story, and what I want to talk about today is another piece to that story of the death of Jezebel, and that is, who is this Jehu character? The one who had the eunuchs push her out of the tower. Jehu is a pretty key part in the Elijah storyline because if you remember, back in 1 Kings 19, when Elijah ran off and he went into the cave and he heard the voice of God, that wasn't in the fire, the earthquake, or the wind, but was in the still small voice, the little whisper. And the voice of God told Elijah in that moment a couple things. And one of the things he said to Elijah was, go and anoint Jehu to be the king of Israel. Well, what happened was, we know in 1 Kings 22, Ahab, who was the king of Israel, he died in battle, the random arrow that got him, and he bled out in his chariot. Well, after Ahab died, his son Ahaziah became the king of the northern kingdom of Israel in his place. And in 2 Kings chapter 1, there's a great story about Ahaziah. He falls through some lattice in the palace, and he's in dire straits. And so he sends people to find out if he's going to survive. But he turns to the prophets of Baal first. So then eventually somebody says, you should probably check with Elijah. And Elijah is like, you went to Baal first. No, I'm not going to help you. And he sends out 50 men to go convince Elijah to come see him. And Elijah calls fire from heaven, and all those 50 men are killed. And so then Ahaziah sends another 50 men, and fire comes from heaven, and all those 50 men are killed. And so Ahaziah sends a third group of 50 men, and Elijah's like, hey, what are you guys here for? And the leader of the third group of 50 men, he's just like, please don't kill us. Please don't kill us. We understand that you can do whatever you want, and that the true God of the universe is friends with you, as I would like your help. And Elijah says, yeah, he's not going to recover. He went to Baal first. No, he's going to die. And so he does. And so Ahaziah died. So his successor is a guy named Jehoram, also known as Joram for short. And so now Joram is the king of Israel, capital city of Samaria. Okay, got that so far? Ahab, Ahaziah, Joram is the order of the kingship. But behind the scenes, there's this guy named Jehu that Elijah was supposed to anoint to be king after Ahab. Well, he's not king yet. And he gets anointed to be king, and then all hell breaks loose. And it's pretty awesome if you read through the first few chapters of 2 Kings. And now I'm going to really confuse you, because we know in the southern kingdom of Judah, the king there is a guy named Jehoshaphat during Ahab's reign. They go off, fight together in the battle that Ahab loses. Jehoshaphat is the king of the southern kingdom. And this Sunday, we're going to study a story in 2 Kings 3 where Jehoshaphat teams up with Joram, the grandson, or the second son of Ahab that becomes succession. But they're going to team up, and Jehoshaphat and Joram, and all things go wrong with that, and Elisha has to save the day. So that's coming this Sunday. But so there's Jehoshaphat's son takes the throne after Jehoshaphat, and you know what his name is? His name is Jehoram. Not to be confused with the Jehoram that comes after Ahaziah, after Ahab. It goes Ahab, Ahaziah, Jehoram in the north. It goes Jehoshaphat, Jehoram in the south. Yeah, that's confusing. Oh, we're not done. Because after Jehoram in the south, the next king of Judah is named Ahaziah. I know. Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, Ahaziah in the south, Ahab, Ahaziah, Jehoram in the north. And they're totally different people. If that doesn't confuse you when you read in 1st and 2nd Kings, I don't know what will. And also, both Jehorams get called Joram for short. And then Israel sometimes called Samaria, and Judah sometimes called Jerusalem. So how can you figure this out without a roadmap? I'm not sure, but I'm going to do my best to keep this all straight for you. Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, falls through the lattice and dies. Jehoram takes over in the northern kingdom. And now Ahaziah in the southern kingdom of Judah, who is in the lineage of David, is a different Ahaziah. Now he and Jehoram in the north are going to team up because there's this new guy named Jehu who everybody wants to be king. And Elisha has anointed him to be king. And so now he's about to take over. And so this is what happens in 2 Kings, I believe, chapter 9, before the whole Jezebel account happens. Jehu calls a meeting in Samaria, and Ahaziah, the southern king of Judah, and Jehoram, the king of Israel in the north, they team up and they meet at Samaria, and they're like, is this going to be a peaceful meeting with Jehu? We don't know what's going to happen. And then Jehu runs up to him, and they're like, is this a peaceful meeting? And Jehu's like, are you kidding me? No, I am here to kill you. And he says to Jehoram, you are walking in the ways of your mother Jezebel, and your time is done. Boom. Shoots him with an arrow. He's done. And he said, throw his body in the vineyard that Ahab killed Naboth to get next to the palace here in Jezreel. And that's exactly what happens. And so then Ahaziah, the king of the southern kingdom, not the Ahaziah who fell through the lattice in the northern kingdom, but of the southern kingdom, he starts to ride away. He's like, oh, no, I shouldn't have teamed up with the king here in the north. And Jehu's like, no, you shouldn't have. And they kill him too. But they send him back to Jerusalem to be buried with his fathers. So Jehu has now, in one afternoon, killed both the king of the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. That's this Jehu guy. But he's doing it on God's orders. God anointed him to fulfill the prophecy that he had told Elijah back in 1 Kings 19, anoint Jehu as king, and he will take care of my judgment on Ahab's family. And so as soon as he has killed Jehoram in the north and Ahaziah in the south, he rides up to the tower where he calls out, and he says, if anybody has had enough of Jezebel and her nonsense, feel free to push her out. And they do. And then that happens. But then in chapter 10, Jehu he levels up and he goes to the next level. Because back in Samaria, the capital city, 70 sons of Ahab are living. They're hiding there. They're living there. And Jehu he sends a letter to the people who were kind of the governors, I guess, not the governesses, like Mary Poppins was a governess, I think. So it's like these guys are supposed to be taking care of the sons of Ahab to protect them from people exactly like Jehu. And Jehu writes to them and he says, hey, Ahab's son Ahaziah fell through the lattice and he died. And now his son Jehoram I killed. So pick the best of those 70 and send him this way and we'll make him king. And all the governors get that letter and they're like, no. Because we can't stand against a guy who could knock off both kings in one afternoon. And we know that you should do what you think is best. We're not going to force another son of Ahab onto the throne. In fact, we think you should be king instead, because it seems like God wants you to be king. And so that's their response. So then Jehu sends them another letter, and he's like, okay, here's what I want you to do. Instead of sending me these boys so that we can find out who would be the next king, how about you send me their heads? And they do. And so 70 heads in baskets get delivered to Jehu in Jezreel. And so he puts those heads out by the city gates. And he says, this is to fulfill the prophecy that God said to Elijah, that all of Ahab's family will be wiped from the earth. And then when Micaiah in 1 Kings 21 and 22, I think it's 21, gives the prophecy to Ahab that you're going to die tomorrow. And is that the one? No, it's the Naboth one in 21. It's when the prophecy about killing Naboth, Ahab feels bad about it. And that's when God tells Elijah, okay, we won't wipe his family off the map while he's still alive. Well, in 1 Kings 10, it's finally done, and Jehu does it, and that's exactly what God told Elijah in the cave was going to happen, and that's totally what happens. And Jezebel, her death is right in the middle of all that. And to me, I feel like that whole scene of Jehu doing all that stuff is really part of the Elijah story. And it certainly tells us about how God deals with rebellious people. And if you know, in the northern kingdom of Israel, where now Jehu is king after this event, if you might have heard it said, there was never a good king in the northern kingdom of Israel. None of them followed God at all. The southern kingdom of Judah had a couple good kings, according to scripture. Jehu is probably the closest to a good king that the northern kingdom had. At the end, it says he actually destroyed the altars to Baal, and he wiped out Ahab's family according to the will of the Lord. And all of these things were certainly a feather in his cap, but it also says he did not turn away from leading Israel to sin the way the other kings of Israel had. And so he doesn't get, in the end, a positive end. But boy, God used him. And God uses powers as he wishes. And this is one of the things I wanted to get out of the whole Elijah story, is corrupt leaders come and go. Kingdoms of the world are going to act like kingdoms of the world. And God will raise up one empire to punish and deal with a different empire. And he's done this throughout all of human history. The Proverbs say he guides the hearts of kings like a watercourse, where he will. And so for every Ahab, there's a Jehu. But it's not like Jehu in the end came out great. For every bad king of God's people, there's a Nebuchadnezzar. And God raised up the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, to deal with his own people. And a lot of the Old Testament prophets, like Habakkuk, are saying this is what's going to happen. And the people are like, and sometimes even the prophets are like, wait, God wouldn't use the bad guys to bring judgment on us. It's like, God will use anybody to accomplish his ends, even a Jehu, even a Nebuchadnezzar. And then God used Cyrus the Great to deal with the Nebuchadnezzars of the world. And then God used an Esther to deal with the Xerxes of the world. And God uses a Nehemiah to help, and an Artaxerxes to rebuild. And he uses Magi to deal with the Herods of the world. And so when you're faced with what's going on in our world, you don't need to worry. God knows exactly who he's going to raise up to deal with the corruption that's happening in our generation. And we don't have to worry about the kingdoms of the world because we serve the King of the universe, and it's his kingdom that matters. And so we press into those things. That's kind of the vision, the strategy here of 2024 at Grace Church, leaning into the things of the kingdom of God, especially from 1 Peter chapter 4, where it says that we need to, if the end of all things is at hand, then we need to be sober-minded, self-controlled, love one another, and be hospitable without grumbling. And lean into those kingdom of the world things, because the kingdom of the world that is corrupt, it's going to change hands. It's just going to keep shifting like sand. But when you are built on the King of Kings, on the rock, then the wind and the waves, they don't hurt you. They're not going to knock you over. So anyway, that's the theme that I wanted to get to. And I should clarify, if you were here for Vision Sunday back in January, the word of the year that I kind of put all of this, what I just said, under that umbrella was the word steadfast. That if the world is in chaos, the more steadfast we are, the more we'll stand out like a light shining on a hill. And I very much believe that. And I like that word steadfast. But what I want to make sure nobody misunderstands me, being steadfast doesn't mean, like, I was a little nervous, and I've thought about it since. that people are going to be like, oh, Pastor Jeff said steadfast is the word of the year. So that means I don't need to change anymore at all. I'm just going to stay where I am. That's not what I meant. Steadfast is not the same as status quo. Steadfast is not the same as stasis. We still are advancing in our growth spiritually. We're advancing as disciples. We're advancing as the church is moving forward. But our goal isn't necessarily to break the code on the next trend or take the next big mountain. No, it's let's be steadfast in kingdom things as we grow together so that we will stand out and be completely countercultural, because everything in our culture is shifting and falling and not steadfast and stable. So that's the idea. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I really wanted to talk about Jehu today, and I have. And we're not going to have time in this Elijah series to cover all the cool stuff at the beginning of 2 Kings, because Holy Week is coming at the end of March, and looking forward to that. And then we're going to do a new series in April and May, and I will announce that as soon as we get a little closer to that. Some other, but what I want to say is, please read 2 Kings 1 through 10, because the adventure stories, the cinematic nature of all these stories we've been doing in this series, they don't slow down. It's just now Elisha's in them, and Elisha has this posture. I think it seems like he's constantly having to face palm because of the people around him. Hey, Elisha, can you get this axe head out of the river? Why'd you lose an axe head? Well, it fell off. Okay, but I borrowed it, and it would shame me to have lost it. Can you help? Okay, make the axe head float. Hey, Elisha, this soup tastes funny. Fix it. Okay, we'll take care of that. And we're going to see a little bit of that also this coming week with Jehoshaphat gets kind of a second chance after his disastrous outing with Ahab at the end of 1 Kings. So we're kind of jumping around, and I'll do my best on Sunday to make sure we know where we are in the story, but we'll be in 2 Kings chapter 3 with Jehoshaphat and his second go-round with God. So that's what's coming, and Holy Week is coming. Other church business to update you on, I'm not sure. We're just kind of back into the rhythm of things, heading towards the end of Holy Week. On Palm Sunday is the 24th of March. That is going to be our Super Sunday in March. So the 10:30 service will have Grace Latino and the English-speaking service combined, and we'll do baptisms that day. So if that interests you at all, and you'd like to be baptized and you haven't been, let us know. You can let me know. Office at gracelongmont.org is the best way to get on that radar. I think that's what I got for today. I'm sure there's a lot more news. Check your Friday email and have a good time. Oh, one more thing. The most recent podcast episode with John and I, the Brothers J, went live over the weekend. It is all about imagination. And I imagine that you'll like it if you download it and listen to it. You can do that through the app, through the church app if you don't have it, or through the church website on the media page where we put up all of our sermons. So there you go. You can use your imagination to listen to a podcast about imagination. So until next time, I will be